Ambassador Selena Kwan adjusted her formal diplomatic robes as she walked through the towering corridors of the Galactic Council's Grand Chamber. The obsidian walls stretched impossibly high, carved with intricate patterns that told the history of 1,000 civilizations. Holographic displays flickered with data streams from across the galaxy, while the soft hum of translation matrices filled the air. After 20 years of humanity's membership in this ancient alliance, Selena still felt the weight of being an outsider. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a massive amphitheater that could house representatives from over 300 species. Crystalline spires rose from the floor, each one housing the environmental controls necessary for different atmospheric requirements. The Aquarian delegates floated in their water-filled pods, while the silicon-based Krolex representatives sat on heated platforms that glowed like miniature suns. At the center of it all stood the speaker's podium, a towering structure of pure energy that amplified voices across the vast space. Selena made her way to the human section located in the furthest ring from the center. The seating arrangement was supposedly based on traditional precedents, but everyone knew it was a reflection of perceived importance. The elder races, those who had founded the council over 8 centuries ago, occupied the prime positions closest to the podium. Their delegates lounged in ornate chairs that hovered above the floor, symbols of their elevated status, both literal and figurative. The Alfarians, with their elongated skulls and silver skin, commanded the most prestigious section. Their Chancellor Vraxar presided over sessions with the authority of someone whose species had mastered interstellar travel when humans were still learning to farm. Next to them sat the Tellarites, insectoid beings, whose compound eyes missed nothing, and whose memory banks contained detailed records of every council decision dating back to the founding. The Xerans, with their 4 arms and philosophical demeanor, occupied the wisdom seats often called upon to mediate disputes between the more aggressive species. And then there were the humans seated in simple chairs in the back row, treated more like observers than full members. Selena had grown accustomed to the daily micro-humiliations, being served refreshments, last having their proposals scheduled for the end of each session when most delegates had already departed, and the constant reminder that humanity was admitted to the council only after the first contact wars had proven they were too dangerous to ignore. The morning session began with the ritual recitation of the Charter of Unified Worlds, a document that spoke of equality and mutual respect among all species. Selena mouthed the words in perfect galactic standard, her pronunciation flawless after decades of diplomatic training. Around her, the other human delegates maintained their composure, but she could sense their frustration building with each passing day. Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief xenobiologist, leaned over to whisper in Selena's ear. "The atmospheric readings from Kepler Station are still being delayed. 3rd week in a row." Selena nodded grimly. Kepler Station was a joint research facility where human scientists worked alongside their alien counterparts. But lately, critical data sharing had become increasingly one-sided. Captain Marcus Webb, the military liaison, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His intelligence reports suggested that several council species were reverse engineering human weapons technology while simultaneously voting to restrict human military development. The hypocrisy was staggering, but when he had raised the issue in previous sessions, it had been dismissed as paranoid speculation. As the session progressed, Selena reviewed the classified intelligence reports that had been troubling her sleep for weeks. Hidden within the bureaucratic language and diplomatic doublespeak was a disturbing pattern. Human innovations in faster-than-light communication were being studied by Alfarian researchers, who then claimed the breakthroughs as their own. Human agricultural techniques that had revolutionized food production on barren worlds were being implemented across the galaxy without credit or compensation. Most troubling of all, human medical advances that had saved millions of lives were being patented by council corporations, while Earth's pharmaceutical companies were blocked from interstellar markets. The whispers among the elder delegates were becoming harder to ignore. During breaks in the sessions, Selena had overheard conversations that made her blood run cold. Humans breed too fast, the Tellarite ambassador had remarked to his Alfarian counterpart. Their expansion rate threatens the established order. Another time, she had heard Chancellor Vraxar dismiss human concerns about trade restrictions by noting that their weapons are crude but effective. Best to keep them contained. The breaking point came during the afternoon session when Earth's proposal for expanded civilian mining rights in the Outer Rim came up for vote. Selena had spent months preparing the proposal, working with geological surveys and economic projections to demonstrate how human mining operations could benefit the entire council. The technology Earth had developed for deep core extraction was revolutionary, capable of accessing rare minerals that had been previously unreachable. She stood at the human delegation's podium, her voice carrying clearly through the translation matrix as she presented the case. Honored delegates, the expansion of mining operations in Sector 7 would increase rare mineral yields by over 40% while reducing environmental impact through our new gravitic extraction methods. Earth requests the right to establish 12 new civilian mining stations operating under full council oversight and environmental protocols. The response was swift and unanimous. Every single alien delegation voted against the proposal. Not one abstention, not one voice of support. The Alfarian representative didn't even bother to stand as he announced, "Motion denied. Humans will overrun system resources with their enthusiasm for expansion." The chamber erupted in barely concealed snickering. Selena felt her face burn with humiliation as she realized that this had never been a serious consideration. The council had already decided before she had even spoken. This was just another exercise in putting humanity in its place. As she gathered her materials and prepared to leave the podium, she overheard a conversation between two Tellarite delegates. "At least human children are cheaper than machinery," one chittered to the other. "Much more versatile for the dangerous work." The casual dismissal of human life as nothing more than disposable labor hit her like a physical blow. That evening, alone in her quarters aboard the human diplomatic station orbiting the council homeworld, Selena stared out at the stars and felt something break inside her. 20 years of patient diplomacy, of swallowing insults and accepting second-class treatment in the hope that humanity could earn its place through merit and cooperation. 20 years of believing that gradual progress was possible, that understanding could bridge the gap between species. She activated the secure quantum communication link to Earth and requested an emergency conference with President Mara Vega. The president's face appeared on the holographic display, her expression immediately serious upon seeing Selena's barely controlled anger. "Madam President," Selena began, her voice steady despite the turmoil in her chest. "I need to recommend immediate withdrawal from the Galactic Council." President Vega leaned forward, her dark eyes searching Selena's face. "That's a significant escalation, Ambassador. What's happened?" For the next hour, Selena laid out the pattern of exploitation and discrimination that had been building for years. She presented the intelligence reports showing systematic theft of human innovations, the voting records that demonstrated coordinated efforts to limit human influence, and the overheard conversations that revealed how little regard the Council truly had for human life and dignity. "They see us as a resource to be managed, not partners to be respected," Selena concluded. "Every compromise we make is seen as weakness. Every innovation we share is stolen and claimed by others. They admitted us to the Council, not out of respect, but out of fear, and now they're working to ensure we never become strong enough to challenge them." President Vega was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. "If we withdraw, we lose access to Council trade networks, technological exchanges, and protection under interstellar law. Madam President, with respect, what protection? What exchanges? We've been giving far more than we've been receiving. And as for trade networks, they've been systematically excluding our companies from profitable contracts, while using our innovations to undercut our competitiveness." The President called an emergency session of Earth Security Council. For 18 hours, the planet's leadership debated the consequences of withdrawal. Military advisors warned of potential retaliation. Economic experts calculated the cost of severed trade relationships. Scientists protested the loss of collaborative research opportunities. But as report after report confirmed the pattern of exploitation that Selena had documented, the consensus gradually shifted. Humanity had tried the path of patient cooperation and had been systematically betrayed. If respect could not be earned through merit, perhaps it could only be gained through strength. The decision came down as Operation Exodus. Earth would withdraw completely from the Galactic Council, recalling all personnel, terminating all joint projects, and severing all official diplomatic relationships. It was a gamble that would either lead to isolation or force the Council to recognize humanity's true value. Selena received her orders 24 hours later. She was to coordinate the evacuation of all human personnel from Council space, including embassy staff, research teams, trade representatives, and civilian contractors. The operation would need to be swift and decisive to prevent interference from hostile Council members. The first sign that the Council intended to make the withdrawal difficult came when human ships attempting to leave the Kepler research station experienced sudden mechanical failures. Gravitic drive systems that had functioned perfectly for years suddenly developed critical malfunctions. Communication arrays went offline without explanation. Life support systems began experiencing random fluctuations. Dr. Vasquez contacted Selena from the station with barely controlled panic in her voice. "They're sabotaging us. My engineers have found clear evidence of deliberate interference with our systems. Someone doesn't want us to leave." Selena immediately reached out through back channels to the few allies humanity had managed to cultivate over the years. Envoy Dran of the Zirans was the most sympathetic his four-armed species, having always valued philosophical discourse over political maneuvering. "The situation is complicated," Dran explained, during a clandestine meeting at a neutral trading post. "Some Council members see human withdrawal as an opportunity to claim your abandoned facilities and technologies. Others fear that your departure will expose certain dependencies that have developed over the years." "Dependencies," Selena pressed. Dran's four hands gestured expressively. "Your species has a remarkable talent for creating elegant solutions to complex problems. Many Council systems now rely on human-designed components and protocols. The gravity generators in the Council chamber itself use human gravitational mathematics. The medical synthesis farms that feed half the Council species use human-developed organic algorithms. Your people have been so generous with their knowledge that it has become integral to our operations." The irony was not lost on Selena. Humanity's greatest strength, their willingness to share and collaborate, had become their greatest vulnerability. The Council had become dependent on human innovation, while simultaneously working to ensure humans could never leverage that dependence for political equality. As the evacuation continued, reports began filtering in from across Council space. The first failures were minor backup life support systems that didn't activate properly, communication relays that experienced unusual static transportation networks that suffered unexplained delays. But within a week, the problems had escalated dramatically. The Grand Council chamber's gravity generators began fluctuating wildly, causing delegates to float helplessly during sessions or find themselves pressed to the floor by crushing weight. The medical synthesis farms that produced specialized nutrients for dozens of alien species started producing compounds that were nutritionally worthless or even toxic. Entire communication networks went down as human-designed quantum entanglement protocols failed without their operators' constant maintenance. Admiral Helena Cruz, commanding the evacuation fleet from her flagship positioned at the edge of Council space, watched the developing chaos with grim satisfaction. "Madam Ambassador, we're receiving distress calls from 17 Council installations. They're requesting immediate human technical assistance." "Decline all requests," Selena replied firmly. "Our people have 3 priorities: get out safely, get out completely, and document everything for the historical record." But the sabotage of human ships was making evacuation increasingly dangerous. Captain Webb's security forces had identified Council agents, placing explosive devices on human vessels, and introducing computer viruses into navigation systems. 2 transport ships had barely escaped destruction when their jump drives had been sabotaged to create catastrophic overloads. It was Envoy Dran who provided the solution. During another secret meeting, he handed Selena a data crystal containing complete schematics of Council security systems and safe passage routes through neutral space. "My people value truth above politics," he explained. "What the Council is doing to your species violates every principle we hold dear. We will not stand by and watch injustice prevail." With Ziran assistance, the evacuation accelerated dramatically. Human personnel were extracted from dozens of installations across the galaxy, taking with them not only their personal belongings, but also every piece of technology, every research file, and every operational protocol they had developed. The Council installations that had relied on human expertise found themselves not just abandoned, but stripped of the knowledge necessary to maintain their operations. Within 2 weeks of the evacuation's beginning, the Galactic Council was facing its worst crisis in over a century. The Grand Chamber itself had become nearly uninhabitable, as environmental controls failed and gravity fluctuated unpredictably. Emergency sessions had to be held in smaller facilities, but even those were experiencing cascading system failures. Chancellor Vraxar called an emergency summit, his silver skin showing the stress markings that Alfarians displayed when under extreme pressure. "Fellow delegates," he announced to the hastily assembled council, "we face an unprecedented situation. The humans' departure has revealed structural dependencies in our infrastructure that must be addressed immediately." Ambassador Nolan of the Tellarites, his compound eyes, reflecting the chamber's flickering emergency lighting, was more direct. "Stop dancing around the issue, Vraxar. We need the humans back, and we need them back now. Every major system in Council space is failing because we've become dependent on their technology and expertise." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. For 20 years, the Council had dismissed human contributions as crude and insignificant. Now, they were discovering that human innovation had become the foundation upon which their entire civilization operated. From Earth's solar system, where the evacuated human fleet had gathered in defensive formation around Luna Station, Selena watched the Council's panic unfold through intercepted communications. President Vega had authorized her to make one final broadcast to the Council, a message that would either open the door to negotiation or close it forever. Standing before the main communication array on Luna Station, with the blue marble of Earth visible through the observation windows behind her, Selena composed herself for what might be the most important speech in human history. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, she began her voice, carrying across the quantum communication networks to every Council world simultaneously. "For 20 years, humanity has served as a member of your alliance. We have shared our knowledge, our innovations, and our dedication to the common good. We have accepted second-class treatment and systematic discrimination in the hope that patience and merit would eventually earn us the respect we deserved." The transmission was being broadcast not just to Council leadership, but to the general populations of member worlds. Selena had insisted on complete transparency, knowing that public opinion could be more powerful than diplomatic pressure. "We asked for equality, and were told to be patient. We offered innovation and had it stolen from us. We sought partnership and were treated as a resource to be exploited. Today, as your systems fail and your infrastructure crumbles, you are learning the true cost of prejudice." She paused, allowing the weight of her words to settle across the galaxy. "Humanity extends one offer to the Galactic Council: return our people who have been detained or threatened. Acknowledge our right to true equality within the Alliance. Enter into genuine negotiations for a new treaty that recognizes humanity as a full and equal partner. Or accept the consequences of the path you have chosen." The transmission ended with a complete communications blackout. Every human vessel, every monitoring station, every diplomatic channel went dark simultaneously. For the first time in its 800-year history, the Galactic Council was faced with a member species that had simply walked away. The reaction was immediate and desperate. Within hours, emergency delegations were being assembled on every council world. Chancellor Vraxar, who had spent decades dismissing human concerns, found himself begging his own security forces to find a way to re-establish contact with Earth. The infrastructure failures continued to cascade throughout Council space. The orbital city of New Centauri, home to 12 million beings, faced evacuation as its artificial gravity systems failed completely. The grand repository of knowledge on Arxis Prime went offline when its human-designed quantum storage matrices collapsed, threatening to erase the accumulated wisdom of centuries. Most critically, the Council's military defense networks began experiencing systematic failures. The early warning systems that protected against raids from the wild sectors, the automated defense platforms that guarded major trade routes, and the shield generators that protected inhabited worlds all relied on human-developed technologies. Without maintenance and updates from their original designers, these systems were becoming unreliable at best and completely non-functional at worst. Dr. Vasquez, now safely aboard one of the evacuation ships, monitored the situation with scientific fascination. "It's like watching an ecosystem collapse when you remove a keystone species," she reported to Selena. The humans weren't just contributors to Council technology. They were the glue holding much of it together. 3 weeks after the evacuation began, a Council delegation arrived at Meridian Gate, a neutral trading station at the border between Council space and the independent systems. The delegation was led by Chancellor Vexoma of the Nexari, a species known for their diplomatic skills and philosophical approach to conflict resolution. The sight that greeted them was unprecedented in galactic history. A Council Chancellor, one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, prostrating herself before the representative of a species they had dismissed as insignificant just weeks before. Ambassador Quan. Chancellor Vexoma began her crystalline voice, carrying harmonics of genuine humility. "The Council recognizes that grave errors have been made. We come not as your superiors, but as petitioners seeking your wisdom and assistance in rebuilding what our prejudice has torn down." Selena stood before the delegation in her formal diplomatic robes, but her posture was that of an equal, negotiating with peers, not a supplicant begging for favor. "Chancellor Vexoma, I appreciate the Council's change in tone. However, humanity has learned that words without action are meaningless. What concrete proposals do you bring?" The initial offers were insulting in their inadequacy. Better seating arrangements in the Council chamber, increased participation in minor committee decisions, promises of enhanced cooperation in trade negotiations. Selena rejected each proposal with calm finality. "Chancellor, these are the same token gestures that have been offered and broken for 20 years. Humanity's requirements are clear: full voting rights on all Council decisions, veto power over any measure that affects human interests, equal representation in all Council bodies and committees, complete restitution for stolen intellectual property, and formal acknowledgement of the Council's past discrimination as part of any new treaty." The negotiations stretched for days as the Council delegation struggled to accept the reality of their situation. Reports continued to arrive from across Council space, detailing the ongoing infrastructure collapse. The Alfarian Home System's central communication hub had gone completely offline. The Tellarite manufacturing worlds were experiencing production shutdowns as their automated systems failed without human oversight. Most devastating of all, the Council's medical networks were beginning to fail. Hospitals that relied on human-designed synthesis protocols for manufacturing medicines were unable to produce critical treatments. Research facilities studying everything from cancer to genetic disorders found their databases corrupted and their analysis systems non-functional. Dr. Vasquez had been present at many of these installations during the evacuation. Her people had built the medical synthesis networks, designed the genetic analysis protocols, and maintained the systems that kept millions of beings healthy across the galaxy. "We didn't just leave our technology behind," she explained to Selena during a private conference. "We took our knowledge with us. They can't simply replace 20 years of human innovation overnight." The breakthrough in negotiations came when Chancellor Vexoma received a priority transmission from the Council homeworld. The planet's capital city was facing a complete environmental collapse as the atmospheric processors failed. Without immediate human assistance, the city would need to be evacuated within 2 weeks. Ambassador Quan, the Chancellor, said, her crystalline voice cracking with strain. I formally acknowledge that the Galactic Council has failed in its founding principles. We have allowed prejudice to blind us to the contributions of our human members. We have taken your innovations without offering proper recognition or compensation. We have treated your people as lesser beings when you have proven yourselves to be among the most valuable members of our alliance. Selena studied the Chancellor's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. What she saw instead was genuine desperation mixed with something that might have been respect. "The Council is prepared to offer everything you have requested," Chancellor Vexoma continued. "Full voting rights, veto power over human affairs, equal representation, complete restitution for intellectual property, and formal acknowledgement of our past discrimination. All we ask in return is your assistance in repairing the damage that our arrogance has caused." The negotiations that followed were unlike anything in galactic history. For the first time, humanity negotiated from a position of strength rather than desperation. Selena and her team crafted the new Galactic Accord with meticulous care, ensuring that every clause protected human interests while establishing mechanisms to prevent future discrimination. The treaty included revolutionary provisions, a rotating council presidency that would eventually place a human in charge of the entire alliance, mandatory sharing of all technological innovations among all member species, protection protocols for species facing discrimination, and most importantly, the right of any member species to withdraw from the Council without interference if their fundamental rights were violated. President Vega arrived from Earth to personally sign the treaty, accompanied by Admiral Cruz and a full diplomatic escort. The ceremony took place in the restored Council chamber, its gravity generators and environmental systems functioning properly for the first time in weeks thanks to returning human technicians. As Selena stood before the assembled delegates, she couldn't help but notice the dramatic changes in the chamber. The human delegation now occupied seats in the front row, positioned as equals among the founding species. The expressions on alien faces ranged from grudging respect to genuine admiration. Chancellor Vraxar, who had dismissed human proposals so casually just weeks before, now stood to address the assembly. Today, the Galactic Council learns a lesson that should have been obvious from our founding. True strength comes not from dominance over others, but from partnership among equals. Humanity has taught us this lesson through their patience, their innovation, and ultimately their courage to demand the respect they had always deserved. The treaty was signed with great ceremony, but Selena felt no sense of triumph. Too much damage had been done, too many opportunities lost for simple satisfaction. What she felt instead was cautious optimism tempered by the knowledge that respect once lost must be constantly maintained. In the weeks that followed, human technicians worked alongside their alien counterparts to repair the damaged infrastructure across Council space. But this time, the collaboration was genuine. Human innovations were properly credited and compensated. Joint research projects were structured as true partnerships rather than exploitative arrangements. Dr. Vasquez found herself appointed as the first human director of the Council Medical Initiative, responsible for coordinating healthcare research across all member species. Captain Webb was named to the Joint Council Defense Committee, where his strategic insights were actually valued rather than dismissed. The transformation was not immediate or complete. Centuries of prejudice could not be erased by a single treaty. There were still voices within the council who grumbled about human uppityness and questioned whether such dramatic changes had been necessary. Some species withdrew from the alliance entirely, rather than accept human equality. But the fundamental power dynamic had shifted permanently. Humanity had proven that their contributions were not just valuable, but essential. More importantly, they had demonstrated that they would not accept second-class treatment, regardless of the consequences. 6 months after the new Galactic Accord was signed, Selena stood once again at the observation deck of Luna Station, looking out at the stars. The human evacuation fleet had returned to their stations across the galaxy, but now they operated under very different conditions. Earth's colonies were expanding rapidly, no longer restricted by artificial council limitations. Human companies were competing successfully in galactic markets. Human scientists were leading research initiatives that would benefit all species. President Vega joined her at the observation window, both women contemplating the vastness of space and humanity's place within it. "Do you think it will last?" the president asked. "This new arrangement?" Selena considered the question carefully. Respect built on fear rarely endures. But respect built on demonstrated value and mutual benefit, that has a better chance. We've shown them that we're partners worth having, not subjects to be managed. The challenge now is to continue proving that every day. A message alert chimed softly, and Selena checked her communication device. It was from Envoy Dran of the Zirans, requesting a meeting to discuss a new collaborative research project, studying the philosophical implications of interspecies cooperation. His message included a note that several other species had expressed interest in joining the initiative. Perhaps, Selena mused, that's the real victory. Not just that we demanded respect, but that we created space for others to find it as well. The stars sparkled before them, no longer distant and forbidding, but filled with possibility. Humanity had journeyed far from their small blue world to find their place among the galaxies. They had faced discrimination and exploitation, but they had also discovered their own strength and dignity. As she prepared to return to her duties, Selena reflected on the lessons learned during those tumultuous weeks. Patience and cooperation were virtues, but they could not exist without justice and equality. Sometimes, the greatest service one could provide was to refuse to accept injustice, even when the cost seemed unbearable. The Galactic Council would continue to evolve, shaped by this crisis and the changes it had forced. New species would be welcomed with genuine equality, rather than condescending tolerance. Collaboration would replace exploitation. And perhaps most importantly, the precedent had been set: no species would be required to accept second-class citizenship in their own galaxy. Humanity had left the Council as supplicants and returned as equals. In doing so, they had changed not just their own destiny, but the fundamental nature of galactic civilization itself. The stars that had once seemed so cold and distant now beckoned with the promise of true partnership among the cosmos' children. And in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, where human representatives now sat in the front row, as equals among equals, the ancient words of the Charter of Unified Worlds carried new meaning. That all sapient beings, regardless of origin or form, shall be granted dignity, respect, and equal voice in the destiny of our shared galaxy. For the first time in its 800-year history, those words had become more than just noble sentiment. They had become reality.